Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of Affiliate Summit East 2014. My name is Rachel Honaway. I'm the CEO of FMTC. I'm your MC. So before we get to our keynote speaker, we just have a couple of housekeeping items. Let's run through those. First, if you haven't already picked it up and you're not typing away an email right now, we've got free Wi-Fi in here. There's the name that you'll find and the password. So please be tweeting about the event. Jump on Twitter, throw out a tweet, use the hashtag ASE14, and then you can also tag at Affiliate Summit. There are a lot of people following the hashtag and Affiliate Summit, so they will see your tweets. That's a good thing. The next Affiliate Summit is already planned. We are going to be in Las Vegas at the Paris Hotel, January 18th to the 20th. Registration is open, so you can grab passes already. If you want to get a meat market table or a booth, that's available already also. Okay, the session slides are going to be available on slideshare.net and then /AFSUM. So if you've gone to presentations and you really would like to have the slides, you can grab them there. Okay, if you haven't already, there is a conference app you can download from this link here, or you can grab it in the App Store. And big congratulations to Sean and Missy. We have over 4,000 attendees at this event. It's wonderful. It's just that's a great number, and this is just a great event and a wonderful opportunity for everybody to come together and network and learn a lot. So later today at the end, we'll have a closing cocktail reception with an open bar. That'll be here at 3:45. So we'll see you back here at 3:45. We want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. Without big sponsors like this, we can't have great events like this. So thank you, ShareASale, Offer It, Volume, HostGator, and Has Offers. And now, help me out welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Julie Gurner.
All right. Okay. So you've had a whole conference filled with wonderful tools and tips. And so really my job up here today is to help you use everything that you've learned and be able to accomplish these things in a way that doesn't completely intrude on your life. We all want to get a lot of things done, and I really want to make this about giving you usable tips that you can take home with you and be able to implement all this great stuff that you learned. So, I don't mean to brag, but I recently accomplished something pretty huge. Has any of you played this game? It is completely addictive. The tile game was phenomenal. And I started off because a group of friends of mine were emailing me the link, and they were all emailing each other and texting each other, trying to figure out who could really solve this game first. And I don't want to brag, but I actually figured it out. And when I figured it out, I got this enormous rush. And whenever you do these things, you get this sense like you are just invincible, that you have accomplished this enormous task that no one else in the world could possibly do, even though clearly many other people have accomplished this task. So it made me really think. I was filled with confidence, my mood was soaring, and I was trying to think, why is it that I feel so great right now? And so I started to do a little bit of research because I'm kind of a nerd, and I was looking back into some of the reasons why this might have really made me feel so good. And there's so much that we could talk about around this, but I'm just going to give you a taste. First of all, when we start to talk about the brain, I probably got this little push of dopamine when I was doing this game. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter, which is a chemical messenger in the brain. And dopamine does a couple of different things. The first thing that it does, which is really cool, is that it predicts rewards, and it gives you a little bump. So when you think you're about to be rewarded, you get this little surge of dopamine. And that's true whether you're playing a game when you think you're about to win, or when you're gambling, or when you're shopping, you're about to get this really big bump, and so dopamine gives you a rush, so that even when you fail, you're motivated to try again. It's pretty cool. The second thing that happens is you get this kind of bump of endorphins. And endorphins are great because what they do is they give you this great sense of confidence. They're a mood elevator, but they also distance you from sense of pain or stress. So that when I won this game, or when you win games that you might play, it makes you feel kind of disconnected from all that work stress, life stress, or anything else that you do. And that's why sometimes we use them as an escape. But the third thing I just wanted to mention briefly is that when I won this game, I probably got a rush of testosterone. Now, even me, a woman, we get a rush of testosterone. And what's great about that is that it elevates your mood, but not only does it elevate your mood, but it makes you feel really confident. And we get that when we're playing games, but we also get that in weird little times, like when your football team is winning. You know, when your football team is winning, you get this rush of testosterone. We measure it. We know this. And that's really cool, although it's not great if your football team does not happen to win, right? So, you know, you win this stuff, and this is a little bit about why we kind of do some of these things, but at the end of the day, I spent hours, like it's embarrassing, I spent hours of my time trying to figure this out, and I got really no reward from it. I didn't make any money, it didn't help my career, it's not helping my business, but you know, I felt like such a victorious woman that I probably didn't do much else that day, and that's really a shame. So, you know, we all can accomplish the things that don't matter. We have no problem doing those things. We play games, we can distract ourselves, we can go on social networks, but, you know, my goal today really is to talk about how to accomplish the things that do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about productivity and give you real tools to use. Because, you know, productivity is a huge industry. You don't think about it, but you know, part of what I do is I advise a couple of companies that even make apps about productivity. It's a huge industry. But like everything else, you know, like the diet industry, everybody wants a quick fix. They want to be able to download something, they want to be able to get something on their computer and have something instantly make them more productive, make them instantly, you know, more fit. And if you've run affiliate campaigns, some of you with the diet industry, you know that people want that quick fix. And they download it and they fall for it because deep down, we all wish we could have it. I mean, if somebody had a pill that would instantly make me more fit and I wouldn't have to go to the gym anymore, I would be the first one to take that pill. So productivity is huge. But the one thing that I will tell you is that if you want to be more productive, it's not just going to be about apps and those types of tools. What it's really going to be about is understanding the brain, understanding how your body works. And then if you want to download some of those apps, they're kind of like icing on the cake. They can help you manage your time a little bit better. Now, there's a lot of kind of misnomers about the brain out there, and sometimes we have a lot of fun with them. For example, if you follow me at all on Twitter, you'll know that sometimes I tweet out these things, and one of them was about the movie Lucy. Have you seen the trailers for the movie Lucy? And they say, you know, we only use 10% of our brain, and what would happen if, you know, we could use all of it? Well, of course we use all of our brain all of the time, but there's no fun movie if people show like Average Joe and this is as good as it gets, right? I mean, we all use 100% of our brain. So, you know, sometimes we do it in fun. Other times we do it because, you know, there are statistics that point to information that isn't exactly accurate. You know, if you ever gather big numbers and you start to run numbers, what you find is that sometimes data points to things that aren't necessarily exactly accurate. And it's when those things kind of determine our behavior that we begin to have problems. So I wanted to dispel one of those myths here today. One is by Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers. You know, he says the 10,000-hour rule is a definite key in success. Now, I'm sure that you've heard this before. And in fact, a lot of people base some of the way in which they work on this 10,000-hour rule because really the underlying principle is that if you want to get expertise in anything, there's this magical number. It's 10,000 hours. And if you only put in 10,000 hours, then you too will be an expert. And he cites a lot of different things around this. But you know, like everything else, psychologists and scientists love things like this because we like to test them. And so there are some researchers at the University of Michigan, and what they decided to do was to really examine how much does practice, just sitting at a chair and grinding it out, how much does practice make you good at what you do? And so they decided to study musicians and chess players. Those are the two groups they were going to study, because those are the two groups that are really based on skill, and not a lot of other things interfere with it. What I mean by that is that, let's just say that I wanted to test the 10,000-hour rule, and I said, well, you know, I want to do a study to see if I could be an NBA player. Now, already we see there are problems, right? So, you know, one is that I might not be tall enough to be an NBA player. I'm 5'4", although I like to say I'm 5'4.5". I'm 5'4", so that's probably not going to happen. But also, I'm a little older than the person usually starting out in their NBA career. So there are variables there that are going to interfere in this study, no matter how much I practice. So that's why they chose chess and music. So they followed these individuals, and they wanted to see what makes someone great at these two skill sets. And this is what they found. It's clear from this data that deliberate practice doesn't account for all, nearly all, or even most of the variance in performance in chess and music. Now, if we go back, the 10,000-hour rule is a definite key in success. This is published. This is in a book somewhere. Science believes this is an unproductive myth. So we see, they say it's really clear from the data. Now, this was just published. You know, this came out in 2014 in a journal called Intelligence. So we know that it isn't about how much time you put in the seat. And we all know this, like, inherently. If you want to see, you know, with chess even, you could say there are some people who are going to spend 20 years becoming a grandmaster at chess. And there are other people who are 15 years old, they spend 1.5 years learning chess, and somehow they are a phenomena. So why does this happen? Why can some people be so good? Why is it that you don't need to spend 10,000 hours sitting in a seat and grinding it out? So that's really what I want to look at here today. How can we be more productive? And what are the things that really interrupt us? So the 10,000-hour rule isn't exactly accurate. Sitting in a seat isn't going to make you exactly an expert. But what are the other ways in which we can use the time we have to be the most productive we can be? And so the first part of that is understanding that your willpower is a limited resource. People used to believe that you can just sit and concentrate all day long. And I think sometimes a lot of employers still do believe this. That's why you're stuck in front of a computer all day long. But psychology has a term for this, and it's called ego depletion. And if you've ever had like a Psych 101 class, there's an old Freudian concept like id, ego, superego. I don't know if people remember that. But ego is the self. Ooh, sorry. Ego is the self, and depletion is to drain. So willpower being a limited resource, in this notion of ego depletion, is really the draining of the self, the draining of your resources. And I know that you've probably felt this, because I certainly have, where you've spent all day sitting at your desk, looking at the computer or doing work, and you haven't done anything physical. Like maybe you've used the restroom once, right? You haven't done anything physical, but you get up from that desk and you are wiped out. You are drained. And there's a real reason why that happens. Because in order to concentrate, in order to really get stuff done, you have to focus. And focus requires a lot of self-control. Self-control both to focus, But the thing that people don't talk about is you're not just focusing on your task, you've got to focus to block all that other stuff out. You have to not kind of think about the distractions. And the distractions are outside of you, but they're also within your own head. Because there's a lot of stuff we'd rather be doing than work, right? You ever sit at your desk and you're trying to focus on the task and it's a beautiful day outside, and you look out that window and you say, oh gosh, I'd love to be outside by the pool. I'd love to be outside taking a walk. I'd love to just be sitting on my deck right now. And you have all these urges that you have to block out actively. That takes resources. It takes cognitive resources. And so when you rely on self-control, you're using mental energy and depleting your resources. And eventually that self-control is fatigued. But what are those resources? And that's what I kind of want to give you the behind-the-scenes look at, because this is what's going to help solve your problem. So when we say depleting your resources, what do we mean? We mean glucose. Glucose is the primary fuel for your brain. And glucose is limited. And your brain kind of sips it as you go through your day. And so as you go through that day, and you're using this glucose, as you get kind of depleting this glucose stores through your day, as you begin to deplete that, you begin to feel more tired, and your ability to focus and pay attention becomes worse and worse. So this is why forcing yourself to work longer doesn't work, and it's a formula for burnout. When you try to sit and pay attention for hours and hours on end, this is not going to work for a couple of reasons. One is because these glucose stores in your brain are being depleted, being depleted, being depleted. And so your concentration is starting to wane. That's why when we're in an office, we start to do things to try to give ourselves a break. We go on Facebook, we go on Twitter, we look at social networks, we go looking at a website. We do anything to try to escape that work. So one tip I can give you to try to combat this in some way is how you eat. Because glucose is a resource that can be restored. And you can, even in the way that you work, you can manage those levels. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how you eat. And I'm not going to get into a big nutritional thing, so you don't have to worry. But mood and food are really connected. And if you want to know how connected mood and food are, think about a movie that you've seen, some kind of romantic, I don't know if it's a romantic comedy, but think about one of those movies where a woman, her boyfriend breaks up with her, and she's so upset, and she's crying and upset, and she walks to the refrigerator, and she opens it up. What is she looking for? Think about it. Someone just said it, ice cream, chocolate, right? She's not looking for a grilled chicken salad in there. I mean, she's not. She's looking for something sugary, fatty. She's looking for comfort food, right? Something to make her feel better. Mood and food are linked. And that's why when you go to the office, think about what people bring in. They bring in coffee and donuts, right? So here we are, we crave sugar. And part of the reason why we want to have sugar and we want to get that into our body is because we want that fast glucose hit. And it makes us feel better. It improves our mood. It helps us to focus. But the thing about the fast glucose, the sugar, the donuts, is that it hits us fast and it leaves us fast. And so we crash. So when you start to think about what we eat, you want to really look to things that release glucose a little bit more slowly. They tend not to be the food that we love, but things like, for example, oatmeal. Most people aren't going to choose oatmeal over a donut, and I don't blame you. But if you want to really have your attention stores a little bit longer, if you choose oatmeal, the glucose releases a little bit slower, and therefore you're able to pay attention longer. So how you eat is really, really important. And I don't even mention things like exercise. You know, things like walking meetings can help retain your glucose levels. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but if you ever have a one-on-one meeting and you have a place outside you can go, going for a walk while you meet with someone is a great way to just kind of be creative, keep your phones and your laptops in your offices, and really just kind of pay attention to each other and get your creative juices flowing. And it doesn't sap as much glucose. So the brain works best with about 25 grams of glucose in the bloodstream, about the amount found in a banana. So that's what research shows into how our brain works best, because if we start to drain that, you're not getting optimal performance and you're not getting optimal attention. So it's really, really important to kind of look at how you snack around the office and the kind of things maybe you keep in your desk drawer and things like that. So with all of the busy tasks that we have, we try a lot of things to get more done, because there's never enough hours in a day to get all the things we want to get done. And so one of the things we might try, which is really going to be counterproductive, is to try to pack as much into those hours as possible. Multitasking. We all think we can do it, and none of us can. You know, research shows over and over again, I'll show it to you here, it takes an average of 15 minutes to reorient to a primary task after a distraction such as an email. Efficiency drops by as much as 40%. So I want you to really think about this for a moment, because the reason why we multitask and we have 4 or 5 or 6 or 9 or 12 windows open trying to do all those things is because we're trying to get more done in less time. But if your efficiency is dropping by as much as 40%, when you multitask, you're actually extending the amount of time it's going to take to get those things done. Think about that. Now, sometimes people say, well, it doesn't take me 15 minutes to get back to a task after I check email. The thing to remember is that it's not 15 minutes to get back to the task. It's 15 minutes to get to that mental space you were in before you were interrupted. That deep focus, that ability to totally zone in on what you were doing, that headspace takes you a while to get back into. So when you're thinking about multitasking, one of the tips I want to give you is to, even though it sounds really simple and it sounds kind of silly, is to do one thing at a time. One thing at a time, and totally focus on it. So if you're going to tackle emails, only do emails, just do that. If you're just going to design something for your landing page, just do that. But don't try to do 5 different things at once, because you're going to really distract yourself. And this also kind of plays into what happens when we bring our laptop into the living room to try to get stuff done. So we're trying to spend time with our family, we're trying to watch TV, enjoy a movie, and we're trying to get work done. You've got to notice it takes so much longer to get anything done that way. So this is really an important thing to look at. And when we look at how to allocate our time, what we know is that the most productive people work in 90-minute cycles with 15-minute breaks. This is very counterintuitive because it's not how we're used to working, but study after study shows that this works really well. And the reason why it works so well is because your brain can anticipate deep focus and also anticipate a break. So you can do things, it's kind of like doing sprints. You can work really hard and get really fast, and then you can take that break. And then you go really hard and really fast, and then you take that break. It does 2 things. It helps you retain your focus, but it also helps with managing your glucose levels. So when you take that break, you're managing those glucose levels. You can go for a walk. And when you take that break, by the way, don't make it doing things on the computer. So don't say, I'm going to work for 90 minutes, and then I'm going to look at Facebook for 15 minutes. I'm saying get up from the desk, go do something, go for a walk, go outside, walk around the office, get a drink of water, do something else. And we find that you become far more productive. If you want to make it even more productive, some people will assign tasks for each one of those 90 minutes. So say, in this 90 minutes, I want to tackle this really hard task I've been putting off. The next 90 minutes, I want to accomplish this. So you have certain tasks that you're even kind of parsing out for this so that you have specific goals to get stuff done. Now, the next tip is one that I actually really enjoy. Mind your associations. We can spend a lot of time talking about your social networks, about your family, about your friends, and whether those relationships are helpful or not so helpful. But when we talk about associations in psychology, what I'm talking about is two things that occur together in time. Now, that sounds kind of like mysterious, so I'll give you an example. Associations, again, are two things that occur together in time. And so they become linked in your mind. And because of that, they can have very biological effects. I'll give you an example. Let's just say that you're watching a horror movie. And even if you don't like scary movies, you've got to have seen at least one. So you're watching a horror movie, and let me set it up here. So you're watching the movie, and in this movie, there's this guy, Jim. And Jim is in his house and doing whatever. And outside, there is a terrible storm, and it's dark, and it's lightning outside, because it always is, right, in a horror movie. And he's in his house, and all of a sudden, the lights get cut, right? Now, Jim, of course, is going to go down to the basement to see what's going on. Now, as Jim gets up and starts walking down the basement, instead of noticing him, I want you to notice yourself. You start to lean forward, right? You may not be aware of it, but your heart is going to start to beat a little faster. Your pupils are actually going to start to dilate. Why? Because you know what's going to happen, don't you? You have made this association before. Jim is never going to walk down those steps and find a surprise party, right? Jim is going to go down there, and something terrible is going to happen to him, and you are waiting for it. You know it's going to happen. You've made that association. And because of that, you have an incredible biological response. Sometimes filmmakers even take this a step further. And I want you to notice this next time you watch a horror movie, because I think it's really cool. But when somebody is about to get attacked, they will focus in on their face, right? And then they'll focus in on that facial expression, really close. The reason why they do that is because when you see an expression of fear in someone's face that close to you, because when you're watching TV, you're like 12 feet away, right? So when you see an expression of fear that close to you, your body, literally, your amygdala actually, reads that facial expression, sends signals to the sympathetic nervous system to start this fight or flight response, which is why you're getting that beating heart. Because in nature, before we knew that there would be televisions, when you see somebody with an expression that scared, and you're that close, it means you should get the heck out of there, right? That something bad is happening really close to you. But during a horror movie, we actually get a little rush from this. And some people like that rush, and some people really hate it, so they cover their eyes so they don't get as stimulated or something like that. So when you think about these associations and you see how biological they are, because we often don't think about it, these associations can cause anxiety and fear when we watch a horror movie, but our work associations are just as powerful, and we don't think about them at all. So I want you to start thinking about your workspace. Where is it located? Where is it located in your office? Where is it located in your home? A lot of us, even if we work outside the home, we have home office spaces or places where we do our work. And those are really, really important. For example, I once had a client who had their office in their bedroom. Now, that is a big no-no for many reasons. Bedrooms are for two things. One of them is sleep. So when you think about where you put your office space, you don't want to be laying down to sleep and looking over at that desk. All the stuff you need to do, the files that you see, the things that you wish you could get done, because that kind of anxiety bleeds into your sleep and affects your sleep. Even though you don't realize it, you're not going to sleep well, or as well as you would if that office space were located somewhere else. And conversely, if you go to do work And you start to get that 1 o'clock slump, and there's that bed right behind you. Oh, that doesn't help things either. So you want to look at the associations that then begin to contaminate each other. But you also want to look at things like noise. And what's the noise level where you're at? With noise, if something is absolutely quiet, we know this is best for sharp focus. But for creativity, we want there to be a little bit of ambient noise, because that helps us to work actually and be a little bit more creative. High ambient noise is bad for work, period. And high ambient noise can even be someone talking on the phone loudly in the coffee shop, and you don't want to hear anything about their conversation, but it's all you can hear, right? We have to compete with that stimuli, and that's why if you do some work at a coffee shop, bring headphones. Do something like that to block that out, because that will distract you, and then you're getting into that multitasking effect where you're losing efficiency, because you have competing stimuli. Also, things like temperature affect productivity. The colder that it is, the worse your effectiveness tends to be. Cornell did a study looking at office temperature and found that when people had their office set at about 68 degrees, which isn't cold for some, but it's cold for me, but 68 degrees, people make 44% more mistakes. And the reason, once you understand glucose levels, is that your brain is using glucose and using resources to keep you warm, even when you're not aware of it. It happens. You walk into a room, and all of a sudden, you don't have to say goosebumps on, right? Goosebumps happen. And they happen because your hypothalamus regulates your body temperature and just makes it happen. You get goosebumps when you're cold to try to make you warm. You start to sweat when you're hot to try to make you cool. So at 68 degrees at a cooler temperature, you really start to make more mistakes. Whereas if you're a little bit warmer, Cornell found that people had 150% better keying output, so they're more productive, when temperatures were as high as 77 degrees, which is kind of wild. The other thing we find is that if you have access to natural light, that kind of windows in your office, that people sleep better, and they actually have less broken sleep. In fact, they sleep 46% better, and they have less broken sleep every single night. So my next kind of tip that I have mentioned before, because it's a really big hang-up of mine, is that I want people to ditch the dream board. And instead of just saying ditch the dream board, which I had mentioned previously, I'm going to add in that I want you to create a progress board. Now, people will say that dream boards are, what's the harm in a dream board? If you don't know what one is, it looks kind of like this. This is just a random one I pulled off the net. So, it's aspirational. It's the car, the life you want, the house you want, the people you want to be like. And some people would say, well, what's the harm in that? What's the harm in tacking up all this stuff and, wanting to have a life like this? And I guess what I would say is, from a psychological standpoint, there's a lot of harm in it. The harm is that a lot of times when you see images like this, you start to picture yourself there, don't you? In psychology, we call this positive fantasies. So you look at that beach house, see it up there, and you can picture yourself sitting there, looking out onto the water. Doesn't it make you feel great? Now, because you feel so great, you are actually participating in a cognitive reward for something you didn't earn. You are starting to sap your motivation. That takes from you. When you get rewarded for things you didn't earn, it takes away your motivation to actually go out and earn it. We're going to look at the study in a minute. But the reason why this is true, and the reason why this kind of takes away, think about it for your home. If you have a contractor come to your home to do some work, do you say, oh, here, I'm going to give you all the money up front, and you just finish it whenever you finish it? Can you imagine? It would take them months to finish it, if they finish it at all. We pay them a little up front, we let them do the work, and then we pay them at the end. You get your reward when you finish the work, because we know that otherwise, sometimes the work just never happens. So you want to look at these dream boards and really think about if they're a good idea, because a lot of people talk about them being a great idea. You know, there's actually a little link on Oprah Winfrey's site where you can build your own dream board. Because when you start building stuff like this, they make you feel good, but dream boards do not make you perform better. In fact, they take away your motivation. So positive fantasy saps motivation over and over and over again. Don't put your dreams up on a board. Just, if you do, it's going to take away every day from what you're looking to do. The thing you want to do is put up a progress board. Now, a progress board is where you have that goal, maybe that beach house at the end, but then reverse engineer it and have all the little steps to get there, right? All lined up. And then every single day, cross something off that list. Watch yourself working to that goal. That's called positive expectation. You're expecting to get there. You're watching yourself work to get there. And that drives effort. Psychologically, that drives motivation. So when we look at the studies on this, this was in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. Positive expectation drives effort. You expect to get there because you're actively watching yourself go through the work to get there. Whereas positive fantasies, just thinking about it, saps motivation. People love to say they're a dreamer, but I guess I would say don't be a dreamer, be a doer, and don't tell anybody what you're doing. The reason why I say don't tell anybody what you're doing, unless you want to work with them, is because when we tell other people what we're working on, we get rewarded too. Do you notice? So you go out and you say, I'm going to build this great thing, and I'm going to do all this awesome stuff, and I'm going to make all this money, and I'm going to buy this or that. And people are like, wow, that's such a great idea. That's awesome. You're getting all these pats on the back, but you haven't done anything yet. I mean, you've done nothing. So what I would ask you to do, I mean, I love this quote. Diane von Furstenberg is a really amazing woman. She says, I don't like to talk about my dreams. I like to make them happen. I prefer to talk about them when they're done. So my challenge to you is talk about them when they're done. Show people what you've accomplished. But don't take away your own motivation because you want that little boost beforehand. I mean, we all know we're going to get it if we tell somebody. Keep that to yourself. Resist the temptation. See if you can do it. And that will make your behavior, that gives you a lot more ammunition to get things done over and over again. So if you're able to do this next one, you will be very, very thankful over the course of your career. And if you're an employer sitting here today, one thing that will be very, very helpful is if you're able to offer your employees flexible time. When we start to look at working with your body and brain, we're going to look at basically your circadian rhythm. This is individual. Every person in here is a little bit different in how their bodies work. Now, your circadian rhythm is a 24 to 25-hour cycle, and how your blood pressure, attention span, all that kind of stuff kind of ebbs and flows throughout the day. And sitting here today, you know when you work best. And in fact, usually we refer to this stream of consciousness by asking people, are you a morning person or are you an evening person? You ever heard that question? Probably. So if you're a morning person, you work best in the morning, your attention span is best in the morning, and you are somebody who's very, very effective, and then usually by like 1:32, you are crashing hard. Yeah? If you're somebody who's an evening person, usually mornings are really rough for you. Mornings are tough. It's tough getting out of bed early. And then by the end of the evening there, you are hitting your stride. You're ready to go. And that's why if we look at traditional 9-to-5 models of work, they don't really work with our bodies, even though they work with businesses. Think about it. If I'm a morning person and I really work great from 5 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I get into work at 9, I'm turning on the computer, I'm getting a cup of coffee, I'm, like talking to my coworkers. Before I kind of really dig in, it's 9:30, 10 o'clock. And my employer just missed the best 5 hours of my morning. If you're an evening person, you're dragging yourself in there with your big cup of coffee in the morning, and then your employer really never is getting your optimum time. So how do we begin to fix this? Well, if you work for yourself, I guess I would challenge you not to work traditional hours if you don't have to, or leave the traditional hours for the easy stuff. So if you're a morning person and you get to work for yourself, tackle tough stuff in the morning when you're great. Leave your emails for like 1 or 2 when you're maybe not at your best, because it's easy and you just need to respond to people, and kind of close it up toward the end of the day. There's a couple ways in which we kind of combat our circadian rhythms, and I bet you know what they are. It's stimulants, right? Because this little part of our brain, the hypothalamus, automatically controls our circadian rhythms. And in fact, it's a little area of the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it releases melatonin. And it does all these neat things that automatically regulate even our basic drives, the hypothalamus. It automatically regulates temperature, hunger, thirst, our sexual drives. The hypothalamus is a pretty cool part of our brain. But in doing that, we have to try to overcome it sometimes, because we can't all work with our natural rhythms. We just can't always do it. So we caffeinate, so that when I'm hitting my 1:30, 2 o'clock slump, I can get a kick of caffeine, or 5-hour energy drink, or Monster energy drink, or in more extreme cases, pharmaceutical companies market things called Nuvigil. Have you ever heard of Nuvigil? It's this prescription medication for shift work syndrome. Shift work syndrome isn't a real disorder. It's circadian rhythm. So like when you're trying to work against your circadian rhythm, we get really caught up. And it makes it very difficult for us to function. So working with your rhythm, if you're able to do it, and if you're an employer offering flexible time for people, you can catch people when they're a little bit better than they would be in a traditional 9 to 5. So if you work with your rhythm, you'll get more done, you'll have greater motivation, and you'll be able to do it faster. It's just the way that we're built. So my next tip in getting things done is going to seem a little counterintuitive, especially at an affiliate marketing conference, right? Everybody's online all the time. But if you want to get stuff done on the internet, you have to spend time off the internet. Now, the stats on this are really interesting. For every 10 minutes that you fool around online, now I'm not doing work, just fool around, like you go on Facebook, you're just browsing around, this is called a crowd out effect. You're actually crowding out other things that you could be doing. So you're taking away active time from your leisure, your work, your personal care. Although, as you can see at the end there, you are increasing consumer purchases and phone calls. Here's it a little bit more clearly. But look at these numbers. For every 10 minutes you fool around online, you're actually losing time from your work, from your sleep, from doing stuff around the house. That's a lot of time. And it's just because you're fooling around. So sometimes when it feels like you don't have time for anything, think about all the places where that time is getting lost that you may not be thinking about. This was published by the head of the Tech Policy Institute, and I thought it was really fascinating stuff. My next tip, take a vacation, a real one. So that means, right now, there was a recent Glassdoor poll in 2014, earlier this year, and it found that only 25% of people take the vacation that they're given. And half of those people do work on their vacation. So 25% actually take the vacation they're given, but half of them actually do work on their vacation. The thing about this is that vacations, remember we're talking about the brain and glucose levels and rest and all of those types of things. If you want to make your brain a machine, you've got to rest it properly. I don't know how many of you go to a gym and you really work out, but there's an effect called overtraining. You ever heard of overtraining? It's when you go to the gym so often that you stop making gains. You stop growing your muscles. You're overtraining. You need a break. And if you don't take those breaks, your muscles don't grow and your fitness level doesn't improve. With your brain, it's kind of interesting because if you don't take a vacation, what we find is that your productivity goes down, your health goes down, and many other variables are affected. A great quote about this: idleness is not just a vacation, an indulgence, or a vice. It's indispensable to the brain. It is paradoxically necessary to getting any work done. Sometimes we have our best ideas when we're not at work. A lot of people have told me, I have this great idea in the shower. I had this great idea when I was taking a walk. If you want to have a really good workplace and you want to have really new and fresh ideas, you got to get away from the office. It's the time when we do all of our reflection. We're able to kind of think back on things that work and things that aren't working. It's a time we get to figure out solutions. It's a really cool time for us to be able to be ourselves, restore ourselves, but also to reflect on all the things that we're doing. And it's really, really important to getting things done. But you know, I thought I would wrap up today by looking at the biggest predictor of success and what research shows being the biggest predictor of success. Because as much as you want to tweak your productivity and you want everything that you do to matter, there's one trait, it's a personality trait, that has been found to be the biggest predictor of whether or not you will be a success at whatever it is that you choose to do. Now, this one trait was discovered recently by a psychologist. Her name's Angela Duckworth, and she was given the MacArthur Genius Grant Award for this particular discovery and her research. And this biggest predictor of success, you know, it's not intelligence. It's not any of the things they tell you it is. It isn't intelligence. It isn't education. It isn't where you come from. The biggest predictor, single predictor of success is grit. It's been established. Grit is having the passion and perseverance to see the things that you undertake and to follow them through. It's having stamina. It's being willing to continue to work on things when everyone else falls away. The gritty individual approaches achievement as a marathon. His or her advantage is stamina. Do you have the passion? Do you have the commitment? Are you willing to take it all the way, even when things are a little rough, even when campaigns are not going so well? Are you able to really hang in there and figure it out and make things work? That's what grit is about. So I think that for me, when I think about this, you know, what I want you to take away from the talk here today is that being committed to something and being an expert at something doesn't mean that your whole life has to fall apart because you sit at a computer and you grind it out every single day. That the most productive people learn how to manage their resources, their cognitive resources. You learn how to manage your time, even when it's not traditional. And you're willing to kind of do what it takes, even when everyone else kind of falls away from that. And if you're able to manage that time and you have the commitment, there's no reason why you can't make anything happen that you choose to do. And so if you decide to kind of undertake something, please keep that in mind, because a lot of times the things that predict success aren't the things you hear about. Always look at the studies, look at the work, because it's out there. And so I don't know if I have any time for questions or not. Do I? Or do I not? Just because I know we got started a little later today. No? Okay, so we'll cut it off here, and if you want, you can find the slides on my site as well as at the affiliate site, and please do keep in touch. I'm pretty active on Twitter, and certainly I'll be up here if you want to just chat with me personally. I'd be happy to do so. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and I really appreciate you being here today.